Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode number 4 of the BamaPreps podcast. I'm Vlad Balasuk, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mason Comer. Mason, how are we doing today?
Another week, another day. I'm ready to talk about some football, man.
Hi, man. Hey, we had a great slate of games. We had a bunch of big movers in our BP Top 10. We've got Bracketology from BamaPreps.com that we get to talk about. And, of course, our Ask BamaPreps section. Now, let's jump right into our on-location game. I was on location. Mason was not. Mason was at the Crubo on Friday, but I was at the Peyton Floyd show, a.k.a. Hewitt versus Vestavia. And when I mean the Peyton Floyd show, 6 total touchdowns, 257 rushing yards, 169 passing yards, 5 rushing touchdowns, 1 passing touchdown. I mean, just an elite performance. You were able to watch the game. What did you see in Peyton Floyd? What did you see in the Hewitt defense? What do you think?
I mean, before the game, Vestavia's commentators and announcers, they did a little show, and they were talking about how Vestavia only gave up on average 8 points a game.
Yeah.
Well, that didn't last too long. I mean, this was a Vestavia defense that held the high-powered Thompson offense to, 20 points?
21 points.
20-something points against, and then they just...
55.
55 to Hewitt, who got held to 14 last week. So, I mean, I don't know what happened.
This is one of those games to where you just like, you have an idea of what the playoffs are going to look like. You have an idea of where teams are at. And this is one of those that just kills all those stigmas because it is crazy the difference from one week to the next. While I was at the game, I had a chance to talk with some coaches, had a chance to talk with some players on the Hewitt side, and from everything that I gathered, they just weren't as prepared for Thompson as they were for Vestavia. And you can tell.
You can tell. We were on the field for the Hewitt-Thompson warm-ups, and you could just tell the mentality Thompson had out there and the mentality Hewitt had. I don't know. Not saying a team was scared. It just didn't look like Hewitt was really ready to face a team like Thompson.
Well, let me tell you, a complete 180. Hewitt looked focused from the time they got off the buses, and just, the defense, another thing I want to touch on, the way that they played was just awesome.
I mean, you could just call it the Floyd show out there. I mean, the coach, and the two brothers leading the offense and leading the defense. I mean, the Floyds took over Vestavia.
I think I saw Floyd as another coach. Yeah, man, it was crazy, and it really shows the type of team that Hewitt can be, the type of offense that Hewitt, the type of points they can put up. You haven't seen this in a while. You saw it against Huffman. But it's such a drop against Thompson, and here we are again against what was the number 5 ranked team in the state on the BP Top 10 at that point. You got to put Hewitt back up there now, and do you think, coming into the playoffs, most likely they're going to have a rematch with Vestavia because they will be the 2 and the 3, and then say they win again like they just clearly showed they could. Hewitt-Thompson Part 2, does anything change?
Hewitt-Thompson Part 2. See, I don't know, because I'm more worried about Hewitt-Vestavia Part 2 first.
Yeah,
because
don't jump.
Because Vestavia is definitely going to be a little bit more motivated to get that second opportunity. I mean, look at what happened last year when Vestavia got another opportunity to face Thompson. They played them in a very close, tight game. So who knows? Vestavia's definitely going to be motivated. But Hewitt-Thompson Part 2, man, I don't know. It's just been the last couple years since Hewitt showed up against Thompson. So until they finally show up, I just don't see where any team beats Thompson right now.
Yeah, you're right. Probably shouldn't have jumped the gun there a little bit. And to your point about Hewitt-Vestavia Part 2, which is... And we're saying this as if both teams are going to win their first round matchups, which is
historically most likely is going to happen.
It's projected. I don't remember the last time it hasn't happened. But anyways, back to this. Vestavia still put up 27 points on Hewitt's defense, and they did that with 4 interceptions from John Paul Head and a few fumbles on offense. You could easily tilt that scale, and this, you prevent a couple more of those touchdowns, this is like a 41-41 game, and then who knows what happened. I think that it was just an off day for Vestavia, and I think that Hewitt played the best game possible that they could.
Yeah, I mean, something that really was telling about the way that game was going, John Paul Head was going to throw the ball away, And when he threw the ball away, he didn't
interception?
throw it out of bounds, and Hewitt just decided to intercept it. I mean, the announcers for Vestavia were just in disbelief.
Couldn't believe
like, there was not a receiver in sight. It was just the Hewitt guy, and he threw it, and Hewitt made a play.
Sometimes it's just how it happens.
And, I mean, I thought it was going to be a shootout, too, with that kick return that Vestavia had. I was like, oh, okay, we're in for a good one. And then just Peyton Floyd took over.
And if you look at our post about his stat line on BamaPreps on Instagram, I mean, you can see the running lanes that he had. You know, he wasn't getting touched in these plays. It was just him just scampering through the defense, you know, maybe avoiding one tackler and just put on a clinic. And if that's something that he can do week in, week out, you know, maybe this Vestavia Part 2, maybe this Thompson Part 2 could go a little bit differently. But we talked a little bit about our BP Top 10 and what has changed with some of these teams. Let's go ahead and jump to that, and let's talk about our Week 8 BP Top 10. So, once again, the top 4 do not change. Clay Chalkville number 1, Saraland number 2, Central Phoenix City number 3, Thompson 4. Now, I think that the closest one to change there is Saraland and Clay. With the way that Saraland has been playing, starting to maybe look a little bit more impressive. Now, I will say this. Clay Chalkville did put up 72 points in 3 quarters against Huffman, but we have to remember that is Huffman. And Huffman probably the worst team in the state this year. They've had a really tough year. From everything I understand, just a young team and trying to figure it out. Obviously, no slight to them. It's just how it happens. When you have a team with a high-powered offense like Clay, 72 and 3 quarters is possible.
I think it was 56-0 at the or
65-0 at halftime.
Yeah, so I mean,
that's just how it happens. But we have our first movement at number 5. Hewitt Trussville and Vestavia Hills switch spots. Hewitt goes to 5, Vestavia goes to 8. 6 stays Hillcrest Tuscaloosa. Auburn stays 7. MGM moves up to 9. That's one we're gonna have to talk about. And Muscle Shoals back to 10. Helena drops off the list. They had a bye week, but after the way that MGM beat Baker, it's really tough not to put them on the BP Top 10.
Yes, MGM taking on a high-powered offense against Baker this week with Josh Flowers, Bryce Kane, and I mean, they just shut them down. I was expecting a bit of
4 interceptions.
Yeah, I believe, didn't you pick Baker to win?
I did pick Baker.
And I mean, I was expecting at least a close game. I mean, the first time this rivalry has had this much running on it in years, and I mean,
yeah.
MGM was like, Baker, I don't know who you think you are, but we're here to stay. I mean, another impressive win. Big one over Charles Henderson to start the year. And now they get this big one over Baker. MGM's getting hot at the right time.
You know, and a lot of people have been commenting, MGM finally getting the respect they deserve. Yes, I agree with that. I had a tough time putting respect on MGM until I saw them beat another elite team down in Region 1, and they just did it against Baker. The way that their defense was able to slow down one of the top quarterback-receiver duos in the state was very impressive. And the way that Jared Hollins, James Bolton, and that MGM offense was able to move down the field, very impressive. And yes, they have a chance to move up even more if they can secure more wins. 8-0 for the first time since 1965. You want to talk about a historical season for MGM? This is the one. And we'll talk about them a little bit later as we get into a little bit of bracketology and where they're at in the playoffs, how far they can make it. But right now, you want to talk about a team that's riding high. It's MGM. Now, let's talk a little bit more. Muscle Shoals is going to stay at 10. They had a Muscle Shoals game. They did what they were supposed to do. Auburn stays at 7, and they got a big one coming up next week against the top team in 7A with Central Phoenix City. On that note, let's talk a little bit about that. Mason, I know you've got your games of the week. Let's go ahead and jump right to that. Do you want to start with the Central Auburn game?
I mean, we might as well. It's the biggest game in the state this week. Central Phoenix City, 7-0. Going up a little north, or I guess a little, what would it be, east? I don't know how that works.
Auburn to Central, I think that'd be maybe a little bit north.
A little bit north. Auburn, Central Phoenix is going to head to take on a 6-1 Auburn team. Look, I don't know the QB situation down at Auburn, but I mean, Central Phoenix City has looked impressive. The only game they've had close this year was against Opelika, which is a rivalry game. and this right here is a rivalry game. So emotions are going to be high. High school football, most of the time rivalry games are pretty close. I think it's going to be a tight one, but I just don't see a situation where Auburn pulls this out. And this could be another Thompson-Hoover situation where we see these teams face again in the semifinals. And who knows, Auburn might be back to 100% by then.
No, I agree. So from everything that I understand, now this is a rough understanding, and the last thing we can do is jump to conclusions here, but it still seems like Jackson Kilgore is out at quarterback for Auburn. So I know that they have been rotating a few guys, and I know that Ian Nation, number 9, one of their top wide receivers, has been getting a lot of play there. I know that number 1, another receiver for them, has been getting play at quarterback. I'd be lying to you if I said I was educated on the whole situation. But it's still a very good defense on Auburn, and it's still a capable offense on Auburn. Now, they, this year, maybe a little bit more than last year's, have struggled, but just because of the quarterback situation. And yes, it is a rivalry game. I think that heading into this one, Central just has to do what they've done all year, and that is overpower teams on offense. I had a chance to finally sit down and watch Central in depth on offense against their game against Enterprise, and tell you what, man, Andrew Alford can air that ball out. He's got one of the best receivers in the business to do it with, Cam Coleman. But not only that, they've got weapons all around. They've got a great running back in Zach Simmons, and right now, with the way that things are going, it is really hard for me to pick against Central Phoenix City. I think they win this one handedly, maybe by 14, 21, something like that is what I'm thinking for this game.
I'm going to take another look at a game in 7A Region 2. I feel like we talk about these teams every week. I mean, the comments love them. But we've got Opelika at 4-4, but 4-2 in region. Don't let that 4-4 record confuse you. Going on the road to take on an Enterprise team at 5-2, 3-2 in region. Enterprise coming off a tough loss to Dothan. But right now, Dothan's sitting outside that playoffs at 5. But the problem is, whoever wins this game, they're sliding right back out, and Dothan might shoot back in on being on a bye week. So who do you have winning this game, Vlad?
I don't know. It's Enterprise just seems to have been sputtering a little bit as of late. And Dothan, with their win last week against them, looked very good. And I think that this is a game that Opelika is able to get up for. I think that this is a game to where they go, hey, we have to win this game. We have to make a statement here. And I think that's what Opelika does. I think that their offense is starting to come into its own a little bit more. You know, obviously it had struggles earlier in the season playing against Thompson, even playing against 6A Theodore. And now I think they're finally starting to pick up a little bit more steam. I'm going to have to go Opelika in this one.
I'm right there with you. I'm going to take Opelika, and I mean, they've got to be one of the best 4-4 teams in the state. I mean,
yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
So once Opelika, if they do pick up the win like we're both predicting, they'll slide Dothan into the 4 seed and put Enterprise on the outside looking in. There's one problem. Enterprise hasn't beat the teams they needed to beat.
Nope.
And Dothan and Opelika will both control their own destiny in that one.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, you know, Dothan should make the playoffs. They've maybe looked arguably more impressive. And I think that this right here is going to be the big one for Opelika.
All right, so we've got games to talk about through the 1A and 3A real quick. We're not going to go too in-depth with them because we're not the most informed on them. But there's some big-time games. We've got Laverne at 6-2 taking on 7-0 Reeltown. I mean, every year, like we talk about every week, we talk about these small school powerhouses. You see them on the Super 7 every year. Reeltown, they're rolling.
Yeah, hey,
and
they're
I think that train's going to keep on rolling. I've got Reeltown picking up the win.
Yeah, I have to as well. They've just looked really impressive. Obviously 7-0, and I don't see that changing.
And then we got a big game in 2A. Might be one of the biggest games in 2A of the year. You got 6-0 Pigsa taking on 6-1 Fife. Every year, you see Fife in the state championship. I mean, they're a dynasty. Might be team of the decade, but you know.
For 2A, yeah.
But you know. I don't know.
Look, Fife struggled a little bit more this year, and more than usual, obviously with their loss in the first game of the year, but they seem to be back to form. But don't let that fool you. Pisgah is a very good football team, and honestly, I can't pick against Fife.
I can't pick against...
It's just like Mark Freeman at Thompson. It's just like Nick Saban in Alabama, Paul Benefield, and Fife can't pick against them.
So I'm going to stick with there too. Taking the safe bet. Going to pick Fife in this one. We're going to move up to 3A now. Take a look at Mars Hill Bible at 8-0, taking on undefeated Lauderdale County High School at 7-0. And you know what? I'm going to take the underdogs in this one. I'm taking Lauderdale County High School to beat it. Mars Hill Bible, historically dominant in 3A. But you know what? Just throw a little flavor in it. Flavor Town, Guy Fieri.
You got a little loud right there. you came in with the heat. Yeah. No, I'm the exact opposite. I don't bet. Mars Hill has been doing what they're supposed to do this year. They look like one of the top 3A teams in the state. I got Mars Hill.
All right. Now we got another big one in 6A Region 6.
There you go. You figured it out?
Clay Chalkville at 7-0. Oxford 6-1. Region title game pretty much this early on. We saw how Clay Chalkville played a close game against Hueytown earlier in the year. Does this have a chance to be another close game like that? Almost a trap game for Clay Chalkville?
Well, obviously both of them are rivals, and back late 2010s, you kind of saw the triad of Clay Chalkville, Pinson Valley, and Oxford. They were all right there, always in contention. And Pinson Valley has fell off a little bit, and Oxford had a little bit of slump, but you got to think that they're back now a little bit. And I think that this game is going to be a Clay Chalkville victory, but what I think this does is this puts Clay Chalkville's number 1 BP top 10 ranking up to the test, because we've seen what happens when Saraland and what Central Phoenix City does when they play games that are a little bit tougher than what you'd think. And this is the first time we've seen Clay do that, have that game since Thompson. And this is going to gauge where Clay is at. It's going to be a rivalry game. It's going to be a region game. This is for the region title. This is a region decider. And it just depends on how much Clay wins by.
Yeah, I think it's not a question of if Clay wins, it's how much they win by. I mean, Saraland took on tough competition in Foley and put up 70 against them.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's up. I mean, Clay's, if they want to keep proving points that they're the best in the state, they've got to put up some points in this one.
They have to keep making
or
statements.
Saraland might be sliding up to number 1 next week. Or, who knows, maybe Central Phoenix jumps both of them.
Yeah, it's a tough deal.
All right, so we're going to go to 5A. You've got Arab at 5-2, taking on Gunnersville, who's having an amazing year at 6-0. And, I think the momentum's going to keep going for Gunnersville. I think they take this one.
Yeah, and I think that Gunnersville is probably the better team here. Arab, I don't think their losses are as bad as some people think, but it's tough to pick against undefeated Gunnersville right now.
All right, and we've got another big one. Debatably the best team in 5A, Central Clay County High School, undefeated, taking on 5A team a few years back, made the state championship in Beauregard, 4-3. I mean, it's a big test for Central Clay County High School, but I just don't see Beauregard really pulling this one off, so I got to take Central Clay County in this one.
Man, tell you what, Danny Horn, Coach Horn, always gets his guys up for games like this, and with the way that Central Clay County has been rolling as of late, I'd have to agree with you. I think that they win this one pretty handedly. And, not because Beauregard's a bad team. You saw how they played Charles Henderson earlier this year, and you saw how they played him last year against a 5A runner-up. But I just think right now, Central Clay County looks like the best team in 5A right now.
Yeah. We've got a big game. Last time ever matchup to end it. We've got 4-2 Sidney Lanier versus Carver Montgomery at 5-2. Now 6A Region 2, it's pretty much decided. The 4 teams are a lock who's going to be in it. It's a matter of who's going to Shelby County and who's staying in Montgomery. And I'm going to be honest, Sidney Lanier...
You good? You got it?
Sidney Lanier.
Sidney Lanier, there it is.
Do you want me to keep going?
Yeah.
So, Sidney Lanier, 4-2. Last time they're ever going to take on Carver Montgomery. I think they're going to be up for this one a little bit.
Yeah.
But man, Carver Montgomery's looking really good. Yeah. They're looking almost as good as they did last year, and they've lost some key defenders.
They're taking care of business right now.
So, I think Carver Montgomery might keep that train rolling and take down Sidney Lanier and pretty much almost lock up that one spot until they take on Pike Road in a few weeks.
So it's funny. These schools have been rivals for a long time, and really the whole Montgomery area has been getting a massive do-over with Robert E. Lee High School getting renamed to Percy Julian High School, with Jeff Davis getting renamed to JAG, and now Montgomery County Schools, whatever the school district is, their city schools, decide that they're going to consolidate Sidney Lanier, one of the historic powerhouses in the state of Alabama, with Carver Montgomery, making that an even bigger school and a candidate to jump up to 7A next year. And Yeah, this is bad blood. This is going to be a big game between those two, and this is the last time Sidney Lanier, they're going out with a bang against a team that they're going to be consolidating with.
Yeah, a lot of new teammates are going to be meeting each other this week.
For that reason, I'm going to pick Sidney Lanier. I think that they are going to find something to win this game.
Big upset in Region 2.
Hey, how about one that you haven't mentioned? How about Leeds Moody?
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know how you missed that one. Nick Mason was
good thing we redid this like a million times. All right, and we've got arguably one of the biggest games in 5A this week.
You're introducing it.
And we've got our final game of the week. Maybe lied a little bit earlier about it being our final game, but we can't forget this one. Got to save the best for last. You got 7-1 Moody, who is just rolling right now, taking on a 5-2 Leeds team. Leeds had a tough loss to Southside Gaston earlier in the year, who's a big surprise team in 5A North for us. And, I think Moody, they've got a lot of momentum going. They looked great this year. Even in loss, they looked great. I think Moody pulls this out against Leeds.
Yeah, Moody's only loss was to Bishop McNamara in the state of Maryland. I don't know how Coach Gaines even found that team.
I know.
They have the same logo. They both have M's. One just says Blue Devils, and the other one says whatever the heck Bishop McNamara's, whatever their mascot is. But in Lee Corso fashion, not so fast, because this is bad blood between these two teams, and I think that. With the way that Leeds is able to slow down the game, the way Connor Nelson's able to run the football, and the way that Kavion Henderson and that defensive line are able to wreak havoc for Leeds, I think that this game is going to be a little bit closer. Now, if you remember last year, Leeds won this game 14-13 because Moody missed a field goal. It wasn't a field goal, it was a PAT, and they ended up losing the game. And, I think that Moody really, really wants this one. But this game is going to be played at Leeds. This game is going to be tight, contested, and for that reason, I got to pick Leeds. That one's probably, I don't know, if I were to scale it, I think that one would be my weakest lock for who I have this week.
Weakest lock, yeah. You could call it the Bucky's Bowl, man. Competing
Buc-ee's
right
Bowl.
there. They're there by each other.
Oh, man.
But, Leeds, man. Whoever wins this, if Moody does lose, it kind of puts Southside Gaston in the driver's seats to lock up the region. But if Moody does win this game, we've got a massive game next week with Moody and Southside Gaston. Gonna be huge. So,
yeah, I think that, I think the more and more I think about it, the more and more I'm just at a crossroads for who I pick for this game. I think that. I don't know. I'm just feeling Leeds for some reason. And you know what else we're feeling, Mason? A little bracketology.
We're Joe Lenardi in it.
Oh, man. Hey, I'm all about them transitions. Look, we got BamaPreps. Every year, BamaPreps.com comes out with their 7A through 1A bracketology for high school football in the state of Alabama. They do a great job with the tiebreakers, with, who's making it in, who's making it out. And in Week 8, we've got them. They're here. Bracketology is here. And we're going to talk a little bit about 7A versus 6A. Now, if you want to follow along at home, you can go to BamaPreps.com, scroll down a little bit, and go to Bracketology. And we're going to start off with 7A. Now, only 16 teams, 8 matchups. There's not, a lot, so we can go more in-depth into it. And we'll start with the first round on the south side of the bracket. Right now, the 1 seed is Central Phoenix City, and they're going to play the 4 seed out of Region 1, Foley. Now, pretty cut and dry here, don't you think?
Oh, yeah. Foley, not nearly as impressive as we thought they were. They were clearly the front runner coming out of Region 1 to start this season, but MGM and Baker having great seasons. So, I think Central Phoenix can handily take care of Foley.
No, I agree. I think this is just like last year, how we saw Region 2 play Central. I think it's going to be much of the same.
Now, a disclaimer we do need to put in, this is all bracketology. This is all AL preps, like a formula they run. So don't get mad if your team's not in.
Okay, big disclaimer guy today. Okay. So, Baker versus Dothan in our second. So this is going to be the 2 seed out of Region 1 and the 3 seed out of Region 2. These teams have already played each other. And Dothan won handedly. And Baker, say what you will about the way that they played MGM. I don't think that should summarize their season, but we've already seen them play each other. It's hard for me to pick Dothan here. Who do you got?
I mean, I'm definitely going to take Dothan. I mean, it's a big round one. They're having to travel to Baker, but we saw it didn't affect them much in the regular season. And I mean, last year Baker didn't look too impressive in round one at home either. I don't think the home field advantage is there for Baker just yet, so I got to take Dothan right now.
Yeah, I'd agree. And then we hop to the number 1 team out of Region 1, Mary G. Montgomery. And this is where the quote-unquote curse could be broken, as they're going to play Opelika. Now, here's the thing. This is going to be a good game.
I mean,
this is going to be a good game.
You talk about drawing the short end of the stick. I mean, I don't know anyone in that region that Mary G. Montgomery would want to pick out of the top 4. Shoot, top 5. I mean, it's kind of like, I mean, you clearly want to avoid Central Phoenix City, but it's like
and they'll do that.
Yeah, but the other 4, whew, they're rough. I mean, Opelika, Enterprise, or Dothan, whoever they end up getting at that 4 seed. It's a tough one. It could be one of the biggest round 1 upsets like we saw last year with Parker and Clay. A big 1 seed going down early. But, I mean, Mary Montgomery, the emotions got to be high. No matter who's in the playoffs, Opelika, whoever. I see Mary Montgomery breaking the streak. I see them taking down Opelika or whoever it is in round 1.
They just seem like a team on a mission this year. And we saw Opelika. Now, as much as we're talking highly about them, we have to remember they lost to a struggling Theodore team this year. And they have losses. They have 4 of them right now. And Opelika is a good team, but I think that MGM at this point is a step above, and I'm going to have to pick them. Now, our Region 2 and our Region 3 matchup is going to be Auburn versus Daphne. Now, Daphne, who plays, MGM?
Yeah.
This upcoming week. A game we didn't talk about, we didn't highlight, but a good game nonetheless. We'll have to see how Daphne plays against MGM, but they're a team who's hanging around, obviously, the 3 seed right now. They're over Foley, and they have to go to Auburn, and by then, you'd assume Jackson Kilgore is back in the saddle. At quarterback, and you have to assume Auburn is rolling. Do you have a tough time picking against Auburn there?
Not really. I think Auburn keeps it rolling, and we see a big round 2 matchup. I mean, Mary G., you talk about getting a bad bracket this year.
Yeah, no kidding. I agree. Yeah, I think Auburn rolls, and I think that was pretty cut and dry. Now, we move to the north side of 7A, and we start with our Region 4, Team 1, and then our Region 3, Team 4. James Clemens right now in the driver's seat for Region 4, and Hoover, Region 3, Seed 4.
Did you say the 4 seed?
Hoover. The 4 seed.
Wow. I mean,
dang.
Hoover, we talked about it, I believe, in the first episode of this podcast. We talked about Hoover getting in the playoffs and taking on a weak Region 4 who has not won a playoff game in a very long time. And we talked about how Hoover could possibly make a run. And I have a hard time picking against Hoover right now. I think Hoover can beat James Clemens.
Let's do a little math here, Mason. Let's break this down a little bit. Let's have a little BP breakdown, if you will.
Ooh, BP math classes in session.
BP breakdown. Hoover, 10-point loss to Mountain Brook. Mountain Brook only beat James Clemens by 6 points.
Could you say, though, look at the difference. 2 different. Earlier in the season, you have James Clemens taking on Mountain Brook. Mountain Brook traveling up there, too. A little rusty, a bit of a road trip.
Hoover's going to have to do the same thing.
Hoover's going to have to do the same thing. But also, it's Hoover. They can get up for the playoffs. We've seen it the last couple of years.
We're yet to see that. This is the prove-it year for Coach Waldrop and the Bucks, and we will see if they can get up. Who do you got? Let's say, who do you got?
I got Hoover, but out of all the games for Region 4, this is their best shot to get a win.
Yeah.
But I just don't see. I can't pick against history, and I've got to take Region 3 right now.
Yeah. Well, for me, I think it happens.
You think it happens?
I think it happens. I think that JC this year has battled with some good teams. They played some good 6As. I think they're battle tested. Obviously, Hoover is too, just because of the region that they're in. But I think that James Clemens, half my heart thinks they can pull off the win. And it's not even an upset, but it's Hoover. So people think of it as an upset.
I mean, when's the last time Hoover didn't make it past round 1 in the playoffs?
Oh, God, that's another deep dive.
That's a very deep dive we got to take. But why don't we take a look at that next game? We've talked about them a lot today. Region 3, right now, the 2 seed, they've pretty much got it locked up unless chaos unfolds. You got Hewitt Trustful taking on Region 4-3, who right now a little tentative at 3. Yeah. Sparkman, who has looked at since starting 5-0, has not looked the best. Who knows if they're in the playoffs by the time we get done with this? And I mean, I'm just going to pick because it's Hewitt. I've got to take Hewitt in this one. Peyton Floyd's got this team rolling at the right time.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's tough for me to pick against. And honestly, the other two of these matchups is pretty
Why don't we just speed run it
through it? We've got Hewitt here. Next up, we've got Thompson versus Florence. Should be an easy Thompson victory. And then we've got Bob Jones. Vestavia Hill's going to have to travel up to Bob Jones. But as you saw, when Vestavia was the 4 seed last year, it didn't matter much. They beat Austin 52-10, who was the 1 seed. So, Vestavia Hills should win that one. You agree?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and that is going to wrap up our 7A bracketology. Now we're going to get to 6A and our final bracketology before we get to our Ask BP. A lot more teams in 6A. So let's say we do a little bit more of a flash round. Region 1, Team 1, Saraland. They're going to open against Region 4, Team 4, Central Tuscaloosa. Should be a Saraland victory. How about this? I'll do it, and if you disagree, stop me, and then we can talk about it. Then we've got Region 2, Team 2, Pike Road against Region 3, Seed 3, Briarwood. I'm going to have to go Briarwood in this one.
You're going to have to go Briarwood in it. I mean, Briarwood's good, but Pike Road's got a lot of talent up there, and I think I see Pike Road pulling it off and setting up a pretty big round 2 matchup for Saraland.
No, I agree. That's going to be a point of contention. We'll have to see how things end up because Pike Road could easily beat Carver Montgomery. And they'd be the 1 seed, then it'd be Carver Montgomery against Briarwood. Moving on, Region 4, Seed 1, Hillcrest Tuscaloosa is going to play Region 1, Seed 4, St. Paul's. Hillcrest Tuscaloosa, a little bit weaker of a regular season schedule, but I think that they'll have a good warm-up game against St. Paul's. I got Hillcrest in this one. Region 3, Seed number 2 is Homewood, and they're going to play Region 2, Seed number 3, Sidney Lanier. Lanier, as we just talked about, are going to have a big game against Carver Montgomery. If they pull that one off, they'll be the Seed 2, but they've got them here at Seed 3, and I have to go with Homewood. They've picked up a lot of steam lately.
Imagine Homewood versus Saraland, a rematch of that epic game from last year again.
I don't think it'd go as pretty as people think.
I didn't think it was going to go that pretty last year either, and Homewood made it a game late.
No, I agree. Now we move down a little bit to Region 3, 2, 4, and 1. Helena is going to be the 1 seed out of Region 3. Wetumpka is the 4 seed out of Region 2.
You got former area foes fighting here.
Man, I still got to go with Helena.
I still got to go Helena. I mean, Helena might play them close, but I mean, until Helena loses, you can't really pick against them.
No, I agree. Then we've got Region 4, seed number 2, Hueytown, against Region 1, seed number 3, Theodore. This is going to be a good game. This is one that...
I believe it's actually a rematch from last year, too. Earl Woods and them traveled down there to take on Theodore.
Wow. I have to catch up on that. Yeah, that might have been the case. Right now, they have Hueytown. They have Theodore coming up to Hueytown. And right now, I like Theodore in this one.
Theodore, I mean, a team not as good as they were last year for sure. Had a big win over Saraland last year. It's not the same Theodore team, but it's also not the same Hueytown team. I think Theodore can take down Hueytown.
Yeah. All right, now we go to Region 2, seed number 1, Carver Montgomery. They're going to play Region 3, seed number 4, Ben Russell. Now, Ben Russell, who just had an amazing display of offense against Pelham, and they've been doing it really all year, and I think that they're starting to heat up a little bit. Who do you have in this one? Me personally, I'm going to go with the upset. I think the 4 beats the 1. I think Benjamin Russell wins this game.
Yeah, I've got Benjamin Russell winning this one. Benjamin Russell's really good, but this is another region where we don't know the 2 through 4. We don't really know where they're going to fall, so who knows? But Ben Russell's definitely a team to watch in 6A.
Now we move down to Region 1, seed number 2, Spanish Fort. They're going to play Region 4, seed 3, McAdory. Now, Spanish Fort struggled on offense a little bit earlier this year, seemed to be getting into groove, and McAdory has just been so-so this year. I'm going to go with Spanish Fort down in the Gump.
And I've got to take Spanish Fort to take it over McAdory.
Yeah. All right, now we move over to the right side of the bracket here if you're looking along with us. We've got Parker, who has already clinched a playoff spot. They are in red. They are Region 5, Seed 1, and they're going to be playing Fort Payne, which is Region 8, Seed 4. Fort Payne, great offense. They put up a lot of points, but, man, Parker's defense looks really good.
Parker's defense, I mean, shut down Mountain Brook last week. I've got to take Parker over Fort Payne.
Yep, I agree. All right, now we move to Region 6, Seed 2. They're going to play Region 7, Seed 3, Oxford. We talked a little bit about them, about how they have a chance to do something against Clay Chalkville, and they are going to be playing Athens at home. My pick is going to be Oxford in this one.
Athens having a great year, but I can't disagree with you.
Now we move to Region 8, Seed 1, Gadsden City. They're going to be playing Region 5, Seed 4, Gardendale, and this one is going to be questionable. I think that Gadsden City is good, but their region is also not the greatest. And you look at a team like Gardendale,
Not having a Gardendale type year for sure.
But they're also starting to pick it up a little bit.
Yeah, so in this one, I'm going to take the upset, a 4 over a 1 right now. I'm taking Gardendale right now to beat Gadsden.
I'm going to have to go Gadsden City still. I think that their wins are still enough. Moving down further, we have Hartselle, who's going to be Region 7, Seed 2, against Region 6, Seed 3, Centerpoint. I think Hartselle's offense is enough. I think that they beat Centerpoint pretty handily here. Now we move down to the final part of the bracket. Region 7, Seed 1, Muscle Shoals against Region 6, Seed 4, Shades Valley. Muscle Shoals has looked like the best team up north right now, other than Clay Chalkville. I think that they beat Shades Valley. Now, we go to Region 8, Seed 2, Buckhorn. Mortimer Jordan, who's Region 5, Seed 3, will have to travel up there. I'm going to go Mortimer Jordan here in the quote-unquote upset. I think that they look like the better team right now.
Yeah, Mortimer Jordan's having a great year, especially after the year they had last year. I've got to take Mortimer Jordan in this one.
Yeah, and you know that historically they have been a good football team. And
5A powerhouse there for a while.
They're getting right back to that, and I think that they're set up pretty handedly if they can get past Muscle Shoals. Obviously, then they would have to play who we talk about next. Region 6, Seed 1, Clay Chalkville. They got to play Coleman, and Region 7, Seed 4, Coleman. Clay Chalkville wins this one pretty handedly. Now we move down to the final team, Mountain Brook versus Lead Huntsville. Region 5, Seed 2 for Mountain Brook. Region 8, Seed 3 for Lead Huntsville. I think this one's pretty shut and dry. Mountain Brook, for these types of games, these early playoff games, they always find a way to advance. But that round 2 matchup against Clay Chalkville is going to be
a big
test.
one. What, a rematch from the semifinals, in 2021?
Yeah.
When Mountain Brook barely lost to Clay Chalkville. And that was one of the most talented teams in the state that year.
No, I agree. And that's going to do it for our 7A, 6A bracketology. On our next episode of the pod, we'll hit 5A and 4A. And if there's any changes to the list, we'll update them. I plan on posting a few graphics this week and then in the coming weeks about bracketology. And thanks to BamaPreps for all the work that they do. Now, we get into my favorite section of the podcast, Ask BamaPreps. And we've got 2 questions for you here since that segment went a little bit long. And the first one is, does MGM have a title chance? Now, we've refrained from talking about MGM in depth here, and we just talked about them in their bracket, so let's assume that they're going to stay where they're at right now as the 1 seed in Region 1. Their road through right now appears to be Opelika and then Auburn. So let's assume that they win out. They go 10-0, they go 11-0, and then Auburn in round 2, that's going to be their tough test. And then, most likely, Central Phoenix City out of the South for them to even get into the playoffs. Does MGM have a title chance right now? I say no.
Right now, I don't see anything happening unless something chaos happens. I mean, it's playoffs. Anything can happen. We saw with Parker and Clay last year. But, I mean, I'm more worried about MGM this week in a big trap game against Daphne. Going to Daphne. Daphne's had some big wins this year. Had a big win not a bad team. Had a big win over Fairhope last week. Who Fairhope was having a great year. Just seemed the wheels have spun off a little bit. So I mean, MGM right now, I wouldn't focus too much on the playoffs. I would focus on finishing out the season strong and making sure we can lock up that 1 seed.
Yeah, I agree. But speaking on title chances, probably not.
Yeah, I don't see. I mean,
they have a tough road, and if they're gonna prove me wrong.
Please prove me wrong. I would love to see one of the most historic Cinderella runs, and it's sad to say that from a 1 seed. It's just the Auburn region, that area has always been historically better.
Now we jump over to their next question on the Ask BamaPreps. 7A Region 4 is chaos. How he starts. Who is the best team? And then I'm going to add something here. Who makes it out? Now we just talked a little bit about who we think could make it out, and that one team is James Clemens, currently the 1 seed there in Region 4. And in all honesty, I think that they're the ones who are going to have the best chance.
They're definitely going to have the one. They're definitely going to be the ones that have the best chance. But I mean, that region is chaos. A few weeks ago, Sparkman looked like they had the region locked up. Then they had a big loss to James Clemens. Bob Jones sneaking back up there. Austin, familiar face, getting back in there. But I mean, I don't even know if those are going to be the final 4 teams. You got Sparkman lurking.
Huntsville still
Huntsville
there?
lurking. Shoot, Grissom, if the right teams win. Who knows? We could see chaos unfold.
Yeah.
I mean, Region 4. I mean, gosh.
Okay, let's think about this. If I was to say who makes it out, I go James Clemens, Bob Jones, Austin Florence.
Yeah, I just think Sparkman's not as strong as they started this season.
I think Huntsville could beat Sparkman this upcoming
Yeah, I mean, and that would, just chaos is getting ready to unfold up there. It's kind of, I guess.
It's like the Pac-12 this year. It's cannibalism.
It's cannibalism in Region 4. I don't know, Region 4, but it is a chance for them to finally get a win over a Region 3 team in the playoffs before we change up that format in the playoffs.
Right. And yeah, that's going to do it for our episode today. A lot that we talked about, a lot of words were said, and if you've made it to this point, thank you. Thank you for listening.
Yeah.
We appreciate the support, and I keep saying it every week that I'm going to cut it up into clips, and it's going to be awesome, and it's going to be on Reels, and it's going to be on TikTok, and I think we have some stuff this week that we could do that with.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, thank you so much for listening, and we will see all of you in the next episode.